The Poco X3 Pro is everyday awesome, but there's one big problem that might make it a terrible choice for some people. At the time of recording, the X3 Pro is just $270 for the 6GB version, and I don't think there's a better device in that price range. Throughout this X3 Pro review, I'm going to compare it to the Poco F3, since these phones are just so similar. And if you want to check out my Poco F3 review, you can click right up here. Before we jump into the 5 things I find most important in phones, here are the specs if you want to pause and take a look. First off, is the X3 Pro fast? Definitely yes. As always, I removed all the animations and developer settings to let the device feel as responsive as possible. And moving around the interface, opening apps, and unlocking the phone were all practically as fast as the Poco F3, except for Chrome for some reason, which was stuttering a lot. And MIUI browser, which is the web browser I normally use on my phone, didn't have stuttering problems, so I'm not sure what's going on there. Powering the X3 Pro is the Snapdragon 860, which is an overclocked version of the flagship processor that powered phones like the Galaxy S10 and OnePlus 7 Pro, paired with 6 or 8 gigs of LPDDR4X RAM and either 128 or 256 gigs of speedy UFS 3.1 storage. It's not quite the top tier specs from the Poco F3, but it's so close that in everyday use, you probably won't be able to tell the difference unless you're playing really demanding games. And even then, for the price, you probably won't be able to find a better gaming phone. Is the screen big and bright? Big, yes. And it's bright enough. It's a 6.67-inch IPS LCD display, so you can see it's not as contrasty as the Poco F3's AMOLED screen. The refresh rate is 120Hz on the X3 Pro though, so unless you're using Chrome, everything feels nice and smooth. It even has a 240Hz touch sampling rate for increased gaming responsiveness. Again, it doesn't match the F3's 360Hz touch sampling rate, but still great at this price. With a peak brightness of around 530 nits, it's definitely not as bright as the F3, but I could still generally view everything just enough in direct sunlight. By the way, if this video's been helpful so far, please give it a like. Thank you for that. Does the battery charge quickly and last all day? It definitely does, and this is the one area where the X3 Pro performs better than the F3. The included 33-watt charger can charge the X3 Pro from 0% to 100% in a little over an hour. I never charge from 0 to 100%. It's not good for battery health. I charge my device when the battery hits 20% and stop charging at 80%. And takes about 35 minutes with the included charger. And even only using a total of 60% of the battery capacity, I made it through a day and a half most of the time. That's with streaming podcasts, watching YouTube, checking email, and just general use. Has the phone been reliable? As far as the software experience, yes. The flavor of Android on the X3 Pro is Xiaomi's MIUI 12.5 for Poco, and it was actually a bit less buggy than the MIUI version running on the Poco F3. If you're coming from a Samsung, Motorola, or Google Pixel device, MIUI might take a minute to get used to, but it's certainly not a poor performing operating system. There are ads, but they can be disabled easily, and the RAM management seemed a bit too aggressive, which means the X3 Pro ended up reloading apps more often than I'd like. But overall, a really good experience. So what's the big downside? US network compatibility. Before I purchased the X3 Pro, I knew it wasn't going to perform as well as the Poco F3 on wireless networks in the US, because it only supports 3 of T-Mobile's and AT&T's 4G bands. What I didn't know is that the X3 Pro is not VoLTE compatible with T-Mobile's network, meaning that voice calls can only use the 2 3G bands that T-Mobile and AT&T will shut down next year. So the X3 Pro will eventually be unable to use voice over US networks. I'm not sure if AT&T or AT&T MVNOs will activate the device right now, but I can tell you that no Poco or Xiaomi devices are listed on AT&T's whitelist. So again, even if they activate it for now, voice will not function after the 3G network shutdown. With that said, I was able to activate the X3 Pro on Mint Mobile, Red Pocket, and TextNow. Surprisingly, I didn't have too many dropped calls, which is really weird since voice is only able to use the 2 3G bands and none of the 4G bands, but call quality was noticeably worse than on the F3. I did contact customer support for each carrier and Mint confirmed that it's not compatible. TextNow also said it wasn't compatible, but Red Pocket said that it was compatible. I'm guessing that Red Pocket just hasn't updated their support information for VoLTE compatibility, since Red Pocket, Mint, and TextNow all use T-Mobile's network and will all be equally affected by the 3G shutdown. So would I recommend the X3 Pro for US buyers? It depends on what you want to do with it. If you need arguably the best phone around $270 and you never make phone calls over the network, then yes, this is a great device. But if you want to activate the phone on a network and use it in the US for a few years, I would not recommend it. I actually think this is the perfect TextNow phone. If you're always around Wi-Fi and don't need a data plan, you could use TextNow completely free for calling and texting. A few more things to note. The speakers aren't as loud as the F3's, but they're good enough. Just a little tinny. The camera's acceptable, and if you want, want more info, you can check out my Gcam Poco X3 Pro video. Oh yeah, it also has a headphone jack. Overall, the Poco X3 Pro isn't top tier, but at this price point, it's everyday awesome. And if you think it's a good fit for you, then please check out the affiliate links in the description. I bought mine from Wireless Place on eBay, and they were great. Low price, fast shipping, and they sent this US adapter for the charger. Please leave a comment if you have any questions about the Poco X3 Pro. And as always, I will answer them perfectly.